Recently, I had an experience with credit card fraud that caused so much unnecessary stress and anxiety. I spent hours on the phone and in chats with my credit card company. I had to get two different cards before the fraud stopped, and I was so worried about what was going to happen to my money in my bank account. And I sometimes have the fear that it's going to happen again, right? And that's why I'm so excited to introduce You Are the Healer's newest sponsor, Aura, an app for protecting online data and personal information. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access things like my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Protecting yourself and your personal information is a form of self-care. I swear. Go to my sponsor, aura.com/healer to get a 14-day free trial and have peace of mind knowing your information is safe. Again, that's Aura, AURA.com/healer for your 2-week free trial. You Are the Healer is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is mandatory because there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking help. I think every person who walks this earth needs therapy, honestly. I'm stoked to be connected with BetterHelp to offer affordable and accessible therapy resources. The link is in my show notes, and you can also go to betterhelp.com/healer. That's better, HELP.com/healer. Now let's get into this episode. Welcome back to You Are the Healer. I'm your host, Sydney Rinderknecht, and we are in this season of The Dark Side. This season is all about diving into those dark, shadowy, negative, uncomfortable aspects of life and of ourselves so that we can heal that much deeper, so that we can transcend these big, scary topics, reach acceptance, and really love and heal ourselves that much deeper. So I'm excited that you're here listening. Thank you so much to everyone who supported the podcast. Thank you to anyone that's reached out to me and said, oh my gosh, I love this episode. If you sent me an Instagram message, whatever it is, I absolutely adore hearing people's thoughts on the podcast, whether it's a full-blown conversation that we have. If you send me a voice memo after an episode, what you think about it. I love this work and I love having these conversations, and healing is so important to our collective human experience. So thank you so much for not only being willing to listen to a healing message and having open ears and an open mind as you listen to this new episode, but thank you so much for anyone that's listened to past episodes. If you've shared the podcast, it really means so much, because if you feel 1% better after listening to an episode and you share that with somebody else, or you talk about it with someone and they listen, then they feel that much better. And it's this big collective effort that I cannot do alone. So thank you so much for supporting You Are the Healer. And let's dive into this episode. So today is going to look a little different than my other episodes, because the way that I've edited my talking points is a lot less structured. So I'm curious to see what this episode is actually going to end up like. So I don't even want to start off with like this is what we're talking about, because I feel like that might keep me in a box, and I kind of just want to go wherever my stream of consciousness goes today. So the thing on my mind that I really want to talk about is shadow work. And before I even talk about shadow work and get into that, you might have never even heard the term, and I feel 10 steps ahead right now. So let's reel it back, because a foundational philosophy for the things that I'm going to talk about today is that humans are multifaceted. Humans are made up of so many different parts, and that's essential before talking about our shadow parts, because we are made up of so many different parts and so many different aspects of our personalities. And this is something that I really learned a lot through therapy and my therapy journey. Is my old therapist, she used to always say, like, you are a gem, you are multifaceted. Your light sparkles from so many different angles. You are not one thing. Nothing in this life, even though our brains, I know my brain loves to think, is completely black and white. It's either this or it's that. That is not the nature of the universe. That is not the nature of human beings. We are multifaceted. There are so many different components to who we are. And why am I talking about this on a healing podcast? Because some of those components of who we are, we don't like. Some of these parts of ourselves, we reject and we hide away. And when we do that, when we don't let part of our light shine, when we pretend like a part of us doesn't exist, subconsciously, that part will start to run the show. Okay, so let me dial it back a little bit. Okay, a lot of the things I've been learning and healing that have been really, really foundational for me is this model called internal family systems, or IFS. And what that is it is a therapeutic model developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz, basically saying that our self is made up of parts. And so I want to talk a little bit about my experience with internal family systems because that totally relates to shadow work and all of these things. So I stumbled across IFS in my therapy journey because I was talking with my current therapist about how there's parts of myself that I really don't like. Like there's traits that I have that I wish I didn't. They don't necessarily feel aligned with who I am at my core. And I was like, how do I get rid of these parts, right? And so my therapist was telling me about IFS, and we started talking about the different type of parts. And so the example that I was using in my life was there's a part of me that is very mean, which I don't like because I think kindness is very important. I know what it's like to, have someone be mean to me, and I hate it. So I'm like, why do I do this? Like, why is there a part of me that's like so good at being mean that I can just come up with a quick comeback and just like end somebody really fast? I don't like that part of me. And so I was talking to her about it, like, yeah, let me heal this part, right? And so there's different types of parts. There's exiles and there's protectors. So these exiles are parts that we have exiled, just like their name says. And so these parts often carry wounds from past trauma, rejection, shame, and they're often very vulnerable, sad, afraid. They're hidden and suppressed because somewhere along the way in your life, you learned that you had to suppress this part of you to survive, to protect you from pain, to live in your household, whatever it is. So there's exile parts, which is what I thought this mean part of me was. Turns out this mean part of me is the other type, the protector. Okay, so these protectors are proactively trying to keep you safe by controlling your behavior, avoiding triggers. Perfectionism could be a protector, or protectors can run to distraction or numbing behaviors, right? And so when I was talking to my therapist, I'm like, yeah, I think this part of me that's mean is exiled. She was like, actually, I think it's a protector. And something that's really cool about the work that Dr. Schwartz does is it's a lot of meditation and visualization. So he's like, what does this part look like? How does it act? How does your body feel when you're in this part, right? And so I'm a very visual person. And so what I put together was this part of me that's mean is like this angry black widow spider with a really hard shell that's like protecting something in the corner, right? And so then my therapist was like, okay, so what is this part of you that's mean protecting? And it went back to such a young memory in my life of exiling this part of myself that is very emotional and that is very sensitive. And when I think of that part of me, that was the exile, the sensitive part of me that I learned to reject at a young age to protect myself, because being sensitive in this world isn't always safe. And so I learned if I protect myself with these defense mechanisms of being mean and sharp, then no one will poke at my sensitive stuff. And when I visualized my sensitive exile part, it was like this warm, reddish pink, like gooey center. Like it is vulnerable and it is scared that it's going to be poked at, that it's going to be prodded at. And so my whole personality formed a part to protect this sensitive part so that I would be okay in the world. But as I grew up, this part that was protecting me once no longer served me. And I wanted to talk about internal family systems and how we are multifaceted and made up of all of these different parts in this episode on shadow work is because our shadow parts are parts of us. Okay, so they are parts of us that we suppress, deny, or reject for whatever reason. And internal family systems and that therapy modality is something that really, really helped me to understand the parts of myself that I was denying or suppressing and learn that they have a role. That is a part of me, and to start to accept it. Because if you don't accept the parts of you that are parts of you that have beliefs and thoughts and emotions, if you don't accept those things, they will run your life. And what do I mean by that? So in the quickest explanation that I can provide, we have a conscious and a subconscious mind. So we have our known self and our unknown self. So there's beliefs that we consciously know that we believe, and there's subconscious beliefs that we are unaware of. And so when you have a part of yourself that you're denying, that you are putting in a corner, that you are ignoring, you are suppressing, that is unconscious, that is unknown, because you're not taking the time, energy, and attention to acknowledge this part and say, hey, what do you have to say? How do you feel? What job do you serve? You know, tell me about yourself. If you're not having that relationship with this part of you, then you don't know anything about it, and you will behave in ways that almost like don't make sense, because this belief and these thoughts and these emotions that you're repressing, like those are parts of you, and so they will be factoring in all of the decisions that you make. So if you don't want your negative repressed self to drive your life, shadow work is imperative. And like, who wants the parts of themselves that they reject to be the ones making their decisions? Nobody. Okay, so shadow work is very important when it comes to our healing journey, because we all have parts of ourselves that we don't offer up right away. We all have parts of ourselves that maybe we're embarrassed of, we're ashamed of, that we don't like. And we don't want these parts of ourselves to be making our decisions. We want our highest self. We want our known self. We want our full integrated whole being to be making decisions that are in our best interest, because these repressed parts of us, they feel very strong emotions, and they're probably not going to be driving you towards something that's a great decision, because they're struggling and they're suffering and they want to feel better. It's important to address the shadow aspects of our personality too, because the more that we ignore, the louder they will get. And so if you've listened to my episode on feeling your feelings, it's like, if you keep repressing a part of you, if you keep repressing your feelings, they will get louder, and they will literally attract experiences to make you feel that feeling, so that you process it and you feel it. So I used to be someone that I literally used to say out loud, oh, I don't get anxious. Oh, I'm not an anxious person, which is hilarious to me now, because that's so not true. So I repressed a huge part of me that gets nervous, that gets anxious, that has fear, like all human beings do. We are literally designed to have these things for a reason. So I used to deny those parts of myself, and my body would just get louder and louder the more that I ignored them. So at this time in my life, when I was saying, oh, I don't get anxious, I don't get anxious, I had debilitating stomach pain. I mean, I was taking medication because my stomach would literally like spasm in my intestines, and it was like so painful. I had to double over. So because I was denying my anxiety from being felt, my body like stored it all, right? And then later in life, I started getting like daily headaches, because I was not allowing myself to feel my anxiety. I wasn't accepting this part of myself. And so it has to go somewhere. When you have these parts of yourself, it's energy. And if you're not going to process it and feel it and give it that space, that time, that attention, it will go somewhere. It can go into your physical body. And that is how I noticed that I had this part of myself that I was denying. Another reason why shadow work is so important and so powerful and transformative is because on the other side of your shadow is your strength. Okay. And let me just keep using the same example that I was using earlier. Is this shadow part of being mean that I have is on the other side my strength, because I'm able to be mean, which I'm like, there's a huge part of me that's like, why are you putting this out? I don't want people to know this about me. But on this other side of, my shadow of being mean, it's that my words are powerful. If I want to deliver a message, whether that's to hurt somebody or to spread love and light, my words are powerful, and that is a strength. Okay. And yes, in the past, I have used that gift to knock other people down to protect myself, which is not ideal. But if you lean into your shadow parts, if you look into them, there is something that you can use for good. And if we're denying these parts of ourselves, we're missing out on this huge opportunity for transformation, and to take the things that come innately to us that are parts of us that we can use to not only better ourselves, but to better this world. And so another aspect, another example I'll share with your shadow also being your strength is For the longest time, I really struggled with worthiness, which I'm so happy I say that in the past tense now. Like, okay, girl. But for the longest time, I felt truly unworthy of love, happiness, anything that I, wanted, because at a young age, I adopted that belief, and that part of myself was kind of running the show. And I share this because on the other side of that shadow part, that part of me that feels unworthy, is a strength that I've actually was told by other people before realizing it in myself, which is pretty interesting. And that's another part of shadow work, is sometimes we reject parts of ourselves that like don't fit with who we think we are. And so the strength that comes from my shadow of feeling unworthy is humility. And I remember the first time someone told me that I was humble, I was like, ha ha ha, ha. What are you talking about? Like, I think I'm all that. But I think, and this person helped me explain that humility is not confidence. And I have a lot of confidence. Like I've always, those two things, they can exist at the same time, is basically what someone helped me understand. And humility to me looks like I genuinely do not think I am better than anybody else. Nor do I think that other people are better than me anymore, because I've healed that shadow part of myself. My confidence in myself isn't a confidence of a level that I'm so much better than everybody else. It's no, I understand that I am a gift, I'm wonderful, and other people are too. It's not, these two things don't clash with each other, which is interesting because I thought that they did. Okay, so now that we know why it's important to address our shadow self, let's talk about how we start even doing it. How do we become aware of our shadow parts? So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. The first thing that I'll mention is something that for me is the easiest, quickest thing to do, is look at what bothers you in other people. I was trying to figure out how to say this differently, but like your projections are such a clear indicator of something that you don't like in yourself. So if you have a strong reaction to someone that does something, it's most likely because they have traits that you unconsciously have and you don't like those parts of you. And so you're going to take those people down and you're going to point out their flaws, because the only reason that you're able to see flaws in other people is because you have those flaws in yourself. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but this for me is the easiest way to tap into my shadow self. And a big thing that came up for me is I'm like, oh my gosh, that person's so mean. Like they're such a bad person. And then I'm like, ah. It's because part of me is also those things, right? So no one is just one way. Like we all have these nuanced parts of us. And so if you're noticing these shadowy parts of you, it's okay if you're a little bit overwhelmed by like, oh my gosh, I have these negative parts of me, or I have these repressed parts. Like we are all made up of different parts, okay? So you are not bad because you have sudden awareness of these negative parts of you, okay? I just want to say that. We are so multifaceted. One of my therapists told me, like, you're a disco ball. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. If you know me, I love disco balls. So like you might have one little piece of glass or mirror, or whatever they're made up of, that is mean, or that is pessimistic, or that is aggressive or angry. That's one tiny, tiny, tiny little part of you in the grand sphere of all of your glory as a disco ball. Okay. And if you didn't have that part, the light wouldn't shine the way that it does. And the way that the light shines is exactly how it's supposed to. Okay. So that's one way to notice some of your shadow parts, is where are you noticing your dislike for other people or other things? And then when you see that reaction, reflect back on yourself. Say, is part of me that way too? And when you're doing these things, love, compassion, grace with yourself, okay? We're not looking at our shadow parts to tank our self-esteem. We're looking at our shadow parts to accept ourselves, because these are parts of us and we are lovely and whole and complex, and these parts of us are worth paying attention to. Other ways to get to know our shadow parts is journaling is a great way. I'm going to drop some journal prompts in the show notes, and I will also post on my Instagram different shadow work journaling prompts. I would love it if you went over there, give it a little like, a little follow, maybe a little share if you're feeling spicy, but I'll drop some journal prompts there. Also, the internet is a great tool at our disposal. There are tons of ways you could just Google shadow work journal prompts, IFS journal prompts, a bunch of stuff. Whatever you want to work on, there's probably a specific shadow work journal prompt for your specific shadow that you're working on. The internet's great. Another way to get to know our shadow parts is therapy, which is a big way how I got to know mine. I have a BetterHelp link. If you're feeling a little festive, like you want to give me a little treat, you can use my link. Another great resource that I have just recently been getting into this year is coaching. Oh my God, has coaching changed my life? Coaching is a really great way to see yourself from another perspective, to challenge your thoughts and your beliefs, and a lot of my subconscious beliefs, awareness, all of that stuff became conscious through coaching. Another modality to access and heal our shadow parts is through inner dialogue. And this might sound a little out there, but I encourage you to have an open mind. This is to heal yourself. So if you're judging this, you're the only person that's hurting. I'm feeling like a little spicy today, maybe. But inner dialogue, this is literally having a conversation with your shadow parts. This is having a conversation with the parts of you that you've rejected. And I know it can sound a little out there, but this has pretty quickly transformed my relationship with the parts of me that were exiled or that were protectors, that I didn't really want them to be operating in that way. Talking to them directly and saying, what do you need from me? What do you have to say? What's your job? What's your role? That was really powerful in my life, understanding that these parts of myself were trying to protect me. They were trying to survive. They had a role, and they were actively working so hard when they didn't need to be. And so I had inner dialogue. I've done this with a lot of different parts of me, actually, is I talk with these parts of me. I say, what do you have to say? What do you need me to know? And then the really transformative healing part of it is I say, okay, I release you from this job. You no longer have to work so hard to protect me, or you no longer have to be scared and in the corner. Like, welcome to the family, right? Because it's an internal family system. All of these parts of you make up this big family. And so talking directly to these parts of you, I mean, I prefer out loud. I think that's way more effective. That can be so transformative and so healing, because you're likely not even aware that this part of you exists, and it's got this whole narrative, this whole belief, all of these emotions, and it's working really hard and taking up a lot of your mental energy. And so if you go in there and you talk to it and you release it from its job, whatever it is, that gives you so much more room to expand and to grow and to have extra energy for literally anything that you want. And then the last way that I'll recommend healing your shadow parts is through meditation. And so there's, again, internet is vast resource, tons of meditation on shadow work. I'm going to link in the show notes a specific one that I've done that is internal family systems meditation, where it guides you through talking to a part of yourself. I have done this one on a variety of different parts to myself, and majority of the time I end up sobbing because of it. So it's very, very powerful. But again, here's the name drop. You are your own healer, so you know what modalities and things work best for you. This is just what worked for me. I'm putting it out there in the ether. Maybe something will stick for somebody. Take what resonates, let the rest fall off. If you have an idea, okay, this is how I'm going to access my shadow parts. This is what I'm going to do. Godspeed. You are the expert of yourself, just like I'm the expert of myself, right? And so I encourage you to go with wherever your intuition is driving you when it comes to healing your shadow self. To wrap up, I'm going to talk about the benefits of IFS and the benefits of shadow work. So with IFS, trauma healing is a reality. You can get to the root cause of emotional pain without re-traumatizing yourself, without going back to that memory. You can address that pain that you experienced and talk to that part and heal from trauma. And trauma, I mean, go on a tangent, but trauma can really run your life if you're not healing from it. Another benefit of IFS is self-compassion. So when you integrate parts of yourself into this family, you cultivate a kind and accepting relationship with yourself. And that in turn will boost your self-esteem. It will boost your confidence. Another benefit of IFS is integration. So that means that these parts of ourselves exist peacefully. They coexist. It's a healthy family. There's balance and there's wholeness. We're not all just one thing. We're not showing just one part of ourselves. We are integrated in our wholeness. We are the full, shiny, glittery disco ball. And another benefit of IFS is empowerment. So when you own these parts of yourselves, when you accept parts of yourself, you are more in control. You are not having these exiled parts run your life. You're not having these repressed parts cause you suffering and limit you. When you integrate yourself, you are in control of the decisions that you make. You are the leader of your decision making, not your shadow parts. Doing shadow work and integrating parts of yourself means you are your most authentic self. There are not parts of you that you are repressing and hiding away. You are embracing yourself in your wholeness and your totality. And when you are more authentic, you will attract people that are more in alignment with you. You will be doing things that feel right with your soul because you are living who you truly are. You're not hiding away parts of you and feeling and behaving in ways that you feel like society thinks you should be. When you're authentic, everything just like dominoes falls right into place. Another benefit of shadow work is you release stored pain. When you acknowledge your suppressed emotions, these suppressed parts of you, you free yourself up. I mean, I think of, I no longer have stomach pain very often. I no longer get headaches. I am physically in less pain because I have acknowledged and felt with these emotions and thoughts and parts of me that I have been suppressing. Another benefit of shadow work is improved relationships. So I was talking a little bit about projections, but when you are more aware about your shadow parts, then you will not be as reactive to other people, which in turn leads to healthier connections and relationships. And if you can see the shadow parts of yourself and give yourself love and grace and compassion, you likely can do that with other people and their parts too, which just overall improves relationships. And the last benefit I want to talk about, which is so exciting, is shadow work is important because it unlocks your potential. I was talking about how your shadow part can also be a strength. So we can look at things in a negative light or we can look at them in a positive light. And when we explore our shadow parts, we get awareness to the strengths that these shadow parts have and our hidden talents and parts of ourselves that are present and exist. And when we embrace them and we give them love and we give them time, energy, and attention to be expressed, there is no limit on what we can do, especially because these shadow parts are parts of us that we decided, okay, other people don't want to see them, or I need to hide this from somebody else. Usually these shadow parts are at our core closer to who we are because we hid them away because we thought maybe other people didn't want them, or maybe we had an experience that taught us otherwise. But these were parts of us before we had these negative experiences. These were parts of us before we thought that maybe other people don't want them. And so if we reclaim, I'm getting excited. If we reclaim these parts of ourselves that we have exiled, I mean, think of what you could do with that. Like, I'm just thinking of my shadow part of being mean versus being a powerful speaker. Like, the potential when you dive into these negative, scary, rejected parts of you, I mean, it is so worth it. And I just want to say, I send you so much love as you navigate diving into your shadow self, as you navigate dealing and confronting things that are tough and uncomfortable. I mean, that's what this entire podcast season is about, is like, there is power in the dark side. Not to sound like Darth Vader, but there is power in these, in this area of life. And if we are scared and running away and repressing it, we are missing out on this humongous opportunity to grow and this opportunity for potential and to skyrocket. Like this, these dark things are part of life. They are, whether you want to accept it or not. And it's up to you if you want to make the choice to dive into them, to learn, to explore, and to grow, or if you want to run away from them. Thank you so much for listening to You Are the Healer in the Season of the Dark Side. I still don't even really know what I'm going to title this episode. I'm sure I'll figure it out. But I do want to leave you with a quote that I really loved. It's from Jacob Nordby, and it says, "Every pain, addiction, anguish, longing, depression, anger, or fear is an orphaned part of us seeking joy, some disowned shadow wanting to return to the light and home of ourselves." So I send you so much love, and may we be the light and home that these parts are seeking. I love you. Until next time.